Evening, everybody. This is a sensory video. Ed Coffey, who is a blogger, pretty well-known blogger in the home brewing world. His blog is Ale of the Riverwards. He does a lot of saisons type beers, a lot of 100% Brett beers, a lot of experimental brewing. Very knowledgeable guy, very well respected. Very educational blog. I highly recommend you check it out. He also, as a side note, he sent me a homebrew in a canned homebrew. If you've never seen canned homebrew like me, this is why you should be checking out his blog, because you'll see just different stuff. It's things that you probably haven't seen before, and you will definitely learn something. Now this video has to do with two other beers that Ed sent me. He sent me a split batch comparison, two different beers. He did a split batch and pitched two different yeasts into each batch. And the yeasts that he used were Brett Drie from the Brewing Science Institute. If you haven't heard of the Brewing Science Institute, it is a yeast company that only sells to commercial breweries. And they have a Brettanomyces strain called Drie, which is supposed to be a very fruity Brettanomyces that's supposedly been isolated from dry Fontainen. And White Labs Brett Drie. Now, the Brett Drie is a new strain from White Labs, and it was a product of the Trois story. So if you're not familiar with the Trois story, Trois was categorized as Brettanomyces by White Labs, and it was found out by Lance Shaner of Omega Yeast Labs, who's a sponsor of the S-Stage Pour Challenge, that Brett Trois was actually Saccharomyces. I've heard kind of two different stories here. The official and probably the true story is that it was misclassified. And genetic analysis by several different people showed that it was Brettanomyces. Another story that I heard, and Chad Jacobson actually posted this on Brian Height's blog. Brian Height writes Sui Generis. He's a microbiologist and a research scientist. And he was one of the people that did genetic analysis on the Trois. Chad Jacobson suggested that there might be actually a contamination issue, because Chad found contamination issues back in 2010 or 2011 or something like that. He posted those on BabbleBelt, and he suggested that it might be a contamination issue. And I've actually heard this rumor from another source as well, that Trois was actually contaminated. And from what I heard is that the Saccharomyces that was contaminating the Brett became the Saccharomyces Trois, and Drie, the Brett Drie from White Labs, was the Brett that was originally in the Trois. I don't think that's true at all, but I guess there's some question as to whether Brett Drie from White Labs is the same as Brett Drie from Brewing Science Institute. Supposedly they're supposed to be the same strain. So Ed Coffey did 100% Brettanomyces fermentation with both of these yeasts. The recipe was an IPA recipe, so it was pretty heavy on the hops, Amarillo, Centennial, and Simcoe. So it might be a little bit difficult to distinguish the beers based on the yeast character. We'll find out. I'm going to try to do a single blind triangle test. Ideally you want to do a double blind triangle test like on Brewlosophy, the blog Brewlosophy. They do double blind tastings where you don't know what the beers are, but you also don't know what the experiment is about. Since I know what the experiment is about, I'll have that insight. But anyway, on to the tastings. Okay, so I have three examples, A, B, and C. I don't know. My helper poured them for me and recorded which one is which. I don't know. Two of them are the same. One of them is different. I'm going to see if I can figure out which one is different. Right away, though, I think that there's a big color difference between B and A and C. So I think pretty positive that that's going to be the different one. So, oh well, there we go. Let's go ahead and do an analysis on all three. And you get a really, really rich banana bread with spice. Yeah, like a clovey spice. maybe a little bit of banana or bubblegum. Probably some stone fruits and some real light citrus. That's just in the back end. I also get a little bit of a Brett funk. Trying to pick a better descriptor, because funk is a terrible descriptor. There's some like overripe grape skins in there. It's actually pretty nice smelling beer, complex. Here we go for the taste. So it's got a pretty moderate mouthfeel for a 100% Brett beer. I think that he probably uses oats. Yeah, almost 2 pounds of oats. Yeah, almost 2 pounds of oats in a 5 or 6 gallon batch, 5.5 gallon. Which you really got to do in a Brett beer, because without that, there's just no body. They get real watery. Definitely a lot of fruit character in there, a lot of stone fruit, apricot. Fairly well balanced. I'd say a moderate to light bitterness that balances. It's a fairly dry beer. Finishes dry anyway. A little bit of sweetness on the front, but that might be just from the body. Kind of a lingering Brett bitterness, I think, but mostly a lot of fruit character, a lot of stone fruit character. Let's go on to B. A little bit lighter shade in color. This one smells a lot more bready, like you can smell the malts. And the malt profile is just pale ale and flaked oats. I was sitting a little bit longer, so maybe some of the more volatiles, some of the more volatile hop aroma came out of it. I want to say like an overripe, getting rotten grape skin kind of aroma. Yeah, very kind of Chardonnay-like, kind of wine-like. I think there's a clear difference between the two. Let's get a taste. Now this one doesn't have as much body as the other one does. It tastes just a little bit thinner. It's also less fruity, although the fruit is the dominating character. It's just very light, and it's not as bitter. Not as bitter at all. I don't get a lot of hop bitterness. That might have been just from the first taste. This is my first beer of the day, so maybe the first taste of Cup A was just a little bit bitter for me, but now my palate is adjusting. But let me go back to it. Yeah, it definitely has a bitterness that lingers on the back end. This does not have that. This is a much lighter beer in flavor overall, with a light stone fruit ester that's kind of nondescript, just not as complex of a beer. I get what might be reminiscent of maybe a little bit of a cheesiness, but like a not an isovaleric acid or butyric acid, just a light cheddarness to it. And the fruit character, I'd say, is kind of on the melon side of things. So I'm pretty sure that C is the same as A based on color. Yeah, it's definitely the same beer. The two beers are different. A and C I like much better. There's more character to it. There's more body to it. B is just a little bit on the boring side, considering all of the hops that go in there. It doesn't taste like a hoppy beer, which kind of tends to happen, I think, with 100% Brettanomyces fermentations. The hops can kind of die out. I don't know. It's really weird. I don't brew a lot of them, but the bitterness is what really kind of goes away, and it kind of leaves the fruit character, but it leaves it in kind of a stripped down manner sometimes, and then is replaced by the fruit character from the yeast, or maybe the fruit character from the yeast kind of overpowers the hop fruit character a little bit. The interaction with the bitterness, though, is really interesting with Brettanomyces to me. So I'm going to go find out which one is which, and I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back. I looked at the results from my my helper, and A and C were in fact BSI Dry, and B was White Labs Drie. Now, I don't know much about Ed Coffey's process of how he brewed the beers, how the fermentation went, how he treated the starters. This video is going to be a part of his blog article, so I really encourage you to check out the links below and read the article so that you know all the variables that he talks about there, and also get his thoughts and his perceptions on these. I hope this video was interesting. Ed, I hope it was helpful for you, and thank you very much for sending the beers. It's an honor to be a part of this, and cheers. By the way, the beers are excellent. Thank you.